TitleMatchNetwork.com.
Welcome to another edition of the RF Video Shoot Interview Series, and it is an honor to be joined by a true legend of the game, Wild Bill Irwin. Welcome to the shoot interview.
A legend. I don't know. I've been called a lot of things. I don't know if it's ever been a legend, though, but we'll go with it. All right.
Excellent. The first question we ask everybody is, how did you get started into wrestling?
Oh, God. My brother, Scott, Scott Irwin, he started through Vern Gagne. He played football for the University of Minnesota and was down there for 4 years. And then at the end of it, he had met Jim Brunzell and Greg Gagne. And, he didn't want to go play any more football. So they said, well, go talk to, maybe you'll be a wrestler. Go talk to, Vern Gagne, who's an M-man, if you will, a graduate of University of Minnesota. And he went over there and talked to him. Then he went through the camp that Cosgrove Series ran for Vern. And, of course, Buck Zumhoff came through, Richard Blood, who's a Steamboat, and Jay. There was a Jan Nelson who died in a car wreck, and there was another guy that came through. I can't remember his name. But he got in, and then when I finished up with the college that I was going to, Scott was down in Charlotte working for the Crockett's, and he just said, well, come on down, get out of Duluth, and just come on down for a while. And 20 years later, I moved home.
Well, was the training more difficult than you thought it would be?
Yeah, the first days I was down there, here I am, lily white boy yank from northern Minnesota where it never gets hot. I go to Charlotte, North Carolina, and you start training with Ric Flair. Well, the first thing you're doing is, squats. Flair, I don't know if you know Flair's training regimen or not, but he does 500 squats like every morning and, all kinds of workouts. And so first thing we were doing was sit-ups and squats in the sun in Charlotte. Well,
wow.
My legs went to rubber, almost fell over, had to go in the house and puke in his bathroom. Yeah, it was a lot more. But I didn't go down to become a wrestler. I never went to become a wrestler. I just went down to, hang around with my brother for a while and see what's going on. Just, I'd come out of college and didn't know what I was going to do. So I went down there and they corrupted me.
What was the kayfabe like back then for a young guy?
Oh, it was real strong.
Yeah.
It was real strong. You couldn't be seen talking to anybody. If you, I used to drive the guys, and if you drove somebody, you weren't seen talking to any of the other wrestlers on the other side. I don't know, I used to drive Blackjack Mulligan or Ric Flair around, as their driver. Well, you weren't seen hanging with their driver or their people, even though you weren't really involved. That wasn't done.
You have any good road stories about driving Mulligan and Flair?
Oh God, other than nothing too racy. Really, Flair. I remember driving him once, and had to drive his Lincoln Mark V or something. You had to drive 100 miles an hour, but nothing too racy there. I guess the one thing I do remember one time was driving. What was his name? Not Blackjack. Oh, he was from Stone Mountain, Georgia. Big guy.
Crusher Blackwell?
Crusher Blackwell had a van. And I was the driver, and we were late because they had all wanted to stop. And they said, oh, you can't be late. You can't be late. Well, I scared them all. I drove so damn fast and just missed cars going by them and stuff, But it was always something, something crazy. But other than that, no, nothing too bad.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, I do remember I drove Mulligan one time, and he was working with Andre the Giant. And Mulligan was a big guy. I don't know if you ever met the old man Mulligan. Well, he was big. And I remember him telling me, he said, when the Andre the Giant says, boss, let's go home, you go home. Because if he wanted to, he'd pick me up, meaning Mulligan, and he'd throw me to the fifth row. And that was a big guy. And so you knew that it lets you know right there where Andre was.
What do you remember about your first match?
Oh, it was Professor Malenko in Lynchburg, Virginia.
Wow.
Yep. I worked with him on September 16th, 1970. I want to say 78 or 79. I guess I could do the math and figure it out. I turned 23 the next day. That's how I remember it.
Oh, wow.
And so I was Lynchburg, Virginia, and I had to go down there. And obviously, you know, I was with Scott, and he got me booked through the Crockett's, booked me to do a match, and I went out there with him. He turned me every way but loose, you know, spun me upside down, made me look good, made me look stupid. I really felt stupid walking to the ring in my underwear, because that's pretty much what it is, right?
Yeah.
In those days, you went out in a little pair of tights. So here I am. I'm a hockey player from northern Minnesota, never been out there in front of people with nothing but a little pair of tights on and some boots. It's like, oh man, you know, this is like weird. And then you go out there and this old man spins you around upside down, makes you look and feel stupid. But it was fun, you know. And then I remember coming back to the dressing room, and Baron Von Erich was in the dressing room. He said, "So you want to be a wrestler, huh, kid?" Yeah, no, yeah. Well, from then on, it's history, you know.
Wow. How do you think that you developed your style over the years? You and your brother had a real signature style to you guys.
You know, my style was always kind of one of, and Scott's. You always had to learn that you had to be able to shift gears. You had to be able to. Some guys are just, you know, they don't know when to stop. They don't know when to slow down. They don't know when to wait. They don't know nothing. They just fly all over the place. But you really got to be able to learn and listen to the crowd, to what they want, you know. In the old days, in the kayfabe time, you know, you'd never be talking about this, but you had to learn about the crowd. They might want tickles and tackles. They might want midget stuff. They might be there for fun, have fun. And you might be going out there trying to murder the guy and do all this tough stuff, and they're going. So you have to learn to what they wanted, you know. And so it just takes a certain amount of time to learn how to do that. And you'd have to learn that, you know, sometimes you'd be doing something and you need to, when it's your time and you've just stopped, let's say the baby face with a big clothesline, well, now you got to shift gears and kick his ass for a few minutes, you know. Then you can slow back down, you know. And I guess, so when I was out there, we always went, the high spots were always going and there's always something going on. And then you'd sit down and you'd wait and see if they liked it or if they didn't, you know. And if they didn't, well, okay, that didn't work. What do you think? Well, let's try this. And so you do that. And then if they burst on that, well, okay, now you know what they want. Yeah. Right? Okay, well, then just give them what they want.
A lot of the veterans that we've talked to over the years, they talk about what you're talking about now, and they say that's the problem with a lot of the younger guys today, is that they lay out their matches, and no matter what the crowd's doing, they just have to stick to going from 1 to 2 to 3.
That's exactly right. They'll stand and they're told, you know, you got 10 minutes, you got 5 minutes, you got whatever amount of time. Well, they'll stand in the dressing room for an hour going over a 5-minute match. And let me ask these guys, I give them a hard time all the time. I says, you got a 5-minute match, you've been standing there for an hour. What the hell are you working out? You know, you can't, these guys, they say, well, I'll put my foot here and then you do this. And it never works that way. Never does. It never does. Because if one guy forgets one thing, the whole thing's screwed up. And now what do? It's an ad-lib situation. It's always ad-lib, because you get in there and you might say, oh, we'll do this or this. And then you get in there and some fat lady in the front row is flashing your tits at you and you're falling over and the whole thing changes. So suddenly you're not doing that match anymore. And you have to be able to ad-lib. And that's exactly what the young guys aren't getting, is the ability to ad-lib, because it's going to screw up. A guy's going to go over the top rope and blow out a knee. Well, you still got 10 minutes and it's on TV. Okay, so what do? Well, you go out there and you drag him around, or you put him down and you kill time, and, you know, you give him a chance to gather his thoughts and get his stuff together, and maybe he can continue or maybe he can't. If he can't, well, you got to go home. But usually they're able to continue, but that's an ad-lib situation, and these young guys, no, they can't do it.
Yeah.
Because they don't. They shouldn't be. The young guys, once they learn to work and learn the moves and are able to, you know, if one is able to call it, they should not be able to talk to each other before the matches. They should be put over there and over here. And they, you know, okay, who's going over or whatever, who's going to do this. That's it. No calling the high spots, no nothing until you get in the ring. It'd be better for everybody involved.
Yeah. Back to your career. You wrestled in the Central States area for a while when you were a youngster.
Central States.
Bob Geigel, Harley Race. Yeah. What are your memories of that territory?
Oh, Bob Geigel. Hey, can I bullshit you? Yeah, fuck Bob. I remember Bob Geigel in the Central States. There was Brian St. John and Randy Alls and Billy Superstar and what was his name?
Bob Brown. Was Bob Brown?
Bob Brown was there, and a guy named Love. What was his name?
Huh.
His last name was Love. I can't.
Christopher Love, the manager?
No. Before him. And there was Frank Morrell. Frank Morrell, the French Angel, was there. And there was a little guy named the Turk. Turk was a bald-headed little round guy, he was like a European Turk. And then there was a referee who refereed for Bill Watts in Louisiana for a while. God, I can't remember their name.
Huh.
But they used to get drunk and then they'd eat garlic. The Turk liked to eat this garlic. And they'd like drink whiskey and stuff before the matches and eat this garlic. And then Saturday afternoon, there you are, and you're wrestling the Turk. Well, oh, yeah, he smells and he stinks. And him and his buddy, the referee, are laughing and giggling at you, because they know they're stupid.
Yeah.
And you're out there just trying to get through it, So they're laughing and giggling and breathing in your face. And, oh, God, it was a mess.
Wow.
But that was a good territory. I enjoyed that. Brody came in. That's where I met Brody. Yeah. And there's a lot of good guys. We used to go down to, what was the name of the bar? Geigel had a bar called the Tinder Trap, or was it? And after the show in Kansas City, that's where you'd go to get paid, right? And it was always stuffed with marks, and it was no bigger than the room we're in, and it was wild, but it was fun, It's where I met my wife, so it was a good place.
Wow. What do you remember of Harley Race from back then?
Harley Race back in those days was a hard-nosed kayfabe. He was not necessarily around there at the time. I think he was more out carrying the belt. Yeah. And I don't even know if he had St. Louis at that time. But, we'd run to St. Louis for, who the heck was the guy over there? I forget, but, Guy.
Muchnick? Sam Muchnick?
Yeah. A couple guys would get to go to St. Louis at once a week or whatever, and Harley would be over there. But, Harley at that time wasn't around there that much, and I didn't know Harley then. I got to know Harley a little bit later, more into the early 80s, mid 80s.
Early members of Skandor Akbar from the territory.
Well, Skandor, I didn't even meet then. I didn't meet Skandor Akbar. I'm trying to think. Skandor he wasn't in Louisiana when I first met him. I think Skandor was going to be in Kansas City when I was coming back one time from Japan. And Jimmy Garvin was supposed to be there, who I knew through my brother and that. And then when I came back from Japan and went down there, Garvin had already split, and Akbar was there, and Akbar was very nice. Yeah. As far as a guy, and
sure.
As far as his stuff at the ring, he was fine. But really, I got to know Akbar a little bit more, I think, in Texas later.
What are your memories of your first trip to Japan?
Oh, Lord. First trip to Japan. I just remember going over. I'm trying to think who was on. Oh, I know who was on it. We went over, and I left. When I went from Florida, because I started in Atlanta. Actually, I started in Charlotte, and then they sent me to Atlanta for Ole Anderson for 9 months. Then I went to Kansas City for 9 months, and from Kansas City, I went to Tampa and Dusty. And one day, I think it was, Terry or Dory Funk called me. Wanted to know if I would be interested in going to Japan on a 3-week tour. Oh, well, yeah, but I don't want to lose, this. Well, they said you can come back. Well, okay, I'll go. And I don't know. I don't know anybody, and I
Yeah.
don't know who's going to be there. Just go. Okay. Well, my brother said, just go. You have fun. Everybody has fun. Well, I go over, and the first person that I get off, and you're wandering through the, trying to get through the gates and stuff to going through the border and then here comes Brody. Wow, hell, Brody. Now I got Brody, and I'd met Brody in Kansas City with all the other goofballs, and had a lot of fun. And Brody was a star over there at the time, so once I locked up with him, it was like, well, shit.
Yeah.
We were just gone. We used to have, we had a lot of fun over there. Japan Brody used to say, "Now don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody this. Tell them it sucks because I want to come over here and then you won't be able to come. Tell them it sucks." So he used to always tell them it sucked over there, but it was great, because you could go. They picked you up at the hotel at, let's say, if you're close or you didn't have to travel, they'd pick you up at 5 o'clock. They'd take you to the building. Afterwards, they'd bring you back, tell you to be in the lobby an hour later. You'd go out. Somebody from the town would be, paying for everybody to eat and have beer, and you'd sit and laugh and giggle with everybody. It was a great time,
When you and your brother started tagging together, who more or less was the captain of calling the matches, or was it pretty equal with the two of you?
Well, by the time Scott and I got together, Scott had obviously been in longer than I had, but when we got together and started doing stuff, I want to say I had a little bit more of the creative ideas of making it all work. He was more of he could do all the high spots and stuff, but he would want to, really smash and bang.
Yeah.
Whereas I did a little bit more of, the theatrical bullshit, a run and chase and, some spots. And I didn't have to be a dominant one out there. I was one more that was into whatever it takes to make the match work.
Yeah.
I don't care. It didn't matter to me. So I don't know. It was pretty much even, but, as far as the creative stuff, if there was ever anything being done, it was me.
Yeah. We were talking before the interview about some of the interviews that, we've come across online, you and your brother from Georgia and places like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you were one of the best promo guys back in the day. How did you develop your promo style?
Oh, Lord, I don't know how you'd say you developed it.
Yeah.
All you knew is that you had to go out there and you had to, you had certain things that you wanted to get over. You wanted to get over a character. It's like when I first got in the ring, you get in there and they wouldn't ever let you do nothing. Right. And I remember one time I got in the ring with, another guy my age or maybe a little bit more. And I grabbed a headlock and I said, "Shoot me off." So he did. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so when you get in front of the camera there and it's your time, wow, you can't go out there and go, "Geez, I don't think Tommy Rich is a very nice guy." You're going to have to put some charisma into it. And you got to do something to make the people watch, and you can't just stand around, because if you do, they're going to, hell, goodbye.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to, have something to it. And so it kind of just it all flows, no matter who you are and no matter what gimmick that any particular person's watching, what that person's giving you as the character, it is a small part of that character, whatever it might be, is a small part of that person. He's not going to be able to give it to you unless it is a small part of it, because he's not going to know how to do it. So what you see some of the times is what you get. Other times it's just a small part of them, but really somewhere in there is a small part that's them.
Yeah.
And Scott and I, brothers, and Rand and Raven, and played hockey and football and stuff together. That was us.
Yeah. What are your memories of wrestling in Memphis when you were a young guy?
Jerry Jarrett, I remember, and now his name just jumped out of my head.
Promoter?
Well, now he was up at OVW, and now he's out with Jarrett back down in
Cornette.
Yeah. Cornette took pictures at the back of the building in not Memphis, Nashville. Was it Nashville? But every time he went there he was. He had his thing set up, and he took pictures of people. That's how he got in. But how he really got in was his mother was good friends with Jerry Jarrett's ex-wife, was Jeff Jarrett's mother. And they ran the show. I think it was Nashville. No. Memphis. Nashville's out here. What's up here?
Not sure. Christina Jarrett?
Indianapolis? No. Yeah, anyway.
Louisville, maybe?
Louisville. I think it's Louisville. It would have been top because Nashville, Memphis, Nashville, and it was up here. Louisville. It was Louisville, I think. He would be there. And he was always there. And then eventually, you know, he got in, and now, well, you can see where he's at. You know?
Yeah.
But that's one of the funny things I remember. I remember him taking pictures. I've got a Harley jacket, a brown leather Harley coat that I called him to. I had seen it at a motorcycle shop up there, and I was looking for a coat, and I couldn't find it again anywhere. I called him. I told him, go buy that, and I'll pay you for it when you bring it to me. And he did. I still have that coat today.
Wow.
Yeah.
How was Jerry Jarrett as a promoter, booker?
Jerry was fine.
Yeah.
I had fun with Jerry. I worked with him several times. I just sprung into my head Gypsy Joe.
Yeah.
Gypsy
Still
Joe.
wrestling.
Is he?
Yep.
God, where is Gypsy Joe?
All over. He does indies, spare indies.
God, he's got to be 60s.
Maybe even older. I worked an indie show with him like 2 or 3 years ago. He was doing death matches.
Gypsy Joe. God, I remember I worked a match with him somewhere, and it was in that Louisville. And he's coming out of there, and it had been me and him versus somebody, and there was some on the way back. It was like if I remember right, the building was kind of like a rodeo arena. It had a high wall anyway. You know, it'd be all come down. There'd be a high wall and then a flat floor that could run rodeos or whatever. And as he's coming back along and he's doing all kinds of stuff with the crowd, I could see a guy, and the guy was pissed off. And Gypsy Joe's going at him, and I could see the knife in the guy's hand. I had to grab Gypsy. Gypsy, he's got a knife. Come here. And we had to take him on.
Wow.
You know, just take him on back. But yeah, you know, we had there was some crazy crap there. Eddie Gilbert was there. Tommy was refereeing.
Yeah. I think you had some matches, maybe you and Larry Latham against the Gilberts.
Yeah. And Scott and I went back into Memphis some years later when we were down in Atlanta and worked against the Poffos. They were the Poffos at the time. Obviously Macho Man and the Professor, but they weren't them guys at the time.
Yeah.
But it was just the Poffos, and I remember that.
Wow. What do you remember about that match working with Randy back then?
Oh, they were fine. You know, they were very good. We were coming out of Atlanta. You know, we were I think the tag team champs at the time. And, you know, they were very good. And over up there, I think we had a good match. I think we went over, but, you know. Yeah. I remember. But what I remember of Randy is, excuse me, Randy was like his father. He had every nickel he ever earned. God, he'd sleep in the trunk of his car. I remember him, and we'd be, where were we? Out on the East Coast. Of course, I guess maybe we're out there now. But we're coming out of somewhere, and we're into the hotel, not the hotel, but we're going into the airport to catch an early flight the next morning. And there they are, Randy and, what was her name?
Lanny. Oh, Elizabeth?
Elizabeth. We're sleeping over there. It was like, well, what are you doing? Well, you know, we didn't want to spend the money for a hotel for just a couple hours or something. You know? And that was the stories that you always heard about his dad, too. His dad would sleep in the trunk of the car and, you know, had every nickel he ever earned. Well, I bet Macho Man's got every nickel he ever earned, too.
Wow. What do you remember about your matches with Jimmy Valiant?
Oh, God. Jimmy Valiant. Oh, he used to always have fun with him.
Yeah.
The Boogie Woogie Man out in Memphis, yeah. I remember one time, Jarrett tells me, he calls me on the phone, he says, you know, you got an interview tomorrow. I want you to write a song. Write a song? I'm like, come on, what? I don't know how to write a song. You know, write a song for the Boogie Woogie Man and Jimmy Valiant. It's like, oh, man. I can't remember the song. But it was something along. You know, Jimmy used to have Jimmy Handsome Jimmy coming into Nashville, TWA. Tell all the girls Handsome Jimmy's on the way. And all that kind of crap. I did something along the same line. I don't know. Trying to beat him up. But we had a good time. Jimmy was always he was a good guy to work with.
What do you remember about teaming up with Larry Latham?
I remember Larry a little bit, but Larry went off and did the Moondogs to New York very quickly, and after that, he was gone.
Yeah.
I remember Larry Latham. He had another name before that. I can't think what it was because I think I met him in Louisiana.
I know him and Wayne Ferris. They were like the Hollywood Blondes or something there.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. What the heck? I remember that, and then he went to New York. He did that stuff up there, and then I never saw him again. Haven't seen him since. Wow. So if you're out there, hey, golly, there's a lot of people out there that you just lose touch with.
Yeah. Memories of superstar Bill Dundee.
I remember Bill Dundee working with him in Memphis, and we're supposed to be doing, I don't know what it was, some type of a match. And of course, you're supposed to get juice, right? Shit, I never really liked doing juice. And evidently I didn't get enough, and he's trying to kick my hand, and I got pissed off at him. Get away from me, because he's trying to make me get more blood. And it's like, but Bill was always, he was all right. I didn't have a lot to do with him other than that. I know that, now I forget his name. That's what happens when you get a lot of chair shots. You start to forget people's names. So people out there, don't be doing the chair shots. What's his name? Bill, God, he was a great worker. I can't think of his name.
A partner with Bill?
No, he married his daughter.
Oh, Bobby Eaton.
Bobby Eaton.
Yeah.
I just remember that Bobby Eaton, married his daughter.
Yeah.
And, that's all. Whatever happened to Bobby Eaton?
I think
whatever happened? Bobby, where are you?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Indies. They did the Midnight Express reunion
do Midnight Express still, they're still out there?
Him and Dennis Convey, they do the Indies.
Do they?
Yeah.
Is Hoot still out there?
Who's
Robert Gibson? And,
Ricky Morton?
Yeah, they're still out there.
They all wrestle each other on the Indies. Yeah.
Jeez, tell them. Wow. Hello, guys. Jeez, I had seen you 100 years.
Do you find it, I don't know, interesting when you hear about guys that you were working with back then, they're still wrestling on the Indies today?
No, it's not that hard to understand. I mean, up until, I'm 53, those guys are probably a little younger than I am. But up until a couple of years ago, when I first got back up into Minnesota, I went for a year or so working with Ken Patera. And, it's not surprising, no.
Yeah.
Especially if you stay with it. If you're working every weekend or every other day, you're in a ring doing that kind of stuff, you get, it's kind of like football or hockey or baseball, the contact sports. Anyway, as long as you stay getting beat up, it doesn't hurt. It's when you take 3 weeks off, you start to go, oh, God, no, what the heck is that? And then as you're not in it, the body, it'll take time to, get immune to getting beat up again. But if they stay in, they're pretty active with it. No, it's not hard to understand at all,
What do you remember about the first time you went down to World Class?
World Class. I came from Calgary to World Class. My brother got me booked through Gary Hart.
Okay.
I think Scott met Gary out in Atlanta, and I was up in Calgary with Randy Taylor.
Wow, there's a name.
Yeah, Randy Tyler. And he was out of Louisiana. Man, we were up there, and there wasn't much going on. They were doing 500-mile road trips. It was like ridiculous. So I remember Scott got me in with Gary, and so I came down, and we drove down from Calgary to Dallas. And I remember they were only running 3-4 times a week, And I remember going to the Sportatorium the first night. You know, I had to find the place. Where in the hell is this place? And there it is. It's downtown. You think the Sportatorium? Wow, what a shock that was. But that building was classic. And as a matter of fact, here about a year or so ago, I went back through Dallas and went down there to see it. It was gone.
Wow.
It was gone. And it was like, it's a part of my past. It was like, oh man, it's gone. But going there, I just remember that, Gary was there, the Von Erichs, meeting Kevin and all those guys, was it was quite different. I enjoyed it. I had 3 years there, 3 years straight, and it was great.
What did once you and your brother started teaming up down there, and you had a good run for a while? What were your impressions of Fritz during that time, as you got to be booked higher on the cards and maybe?
Well, Fritz always treated me very well. He always did. I've told the story before that, when it was like first year or so I was down there. I came in. I was just Bill Irwin. I wasn't anybody. Working for Gary. Bronco Lubitsch was the referee. Fritz was the promoter. Fritz wasn't really, you didn't see him that much, but Bronco Lubitsch kind of gave me the name of Wild Bill. He's kind of like wild in there. I don't know, because I went hard. I didn't stand around just trying to kill time. I like to make things go. And so that's where I got the Wild Bill. And then and I think Gary liked me, and so Fritz did too. And the boys, I got along with the boys. We were the same age,
Yeah.
And so one day I'm in there, and there was Kathleen White. She was Fritz's secretary, all right? And if you wanted to go, you'd have to get paid. You had to go upstairs and you had to go and ask Miss White if the checks were ready. And she had to go in and get them from Fritz. And she was like the keeper of the gate, because you couldn't get by her. You had to go up, you'd knock on her door, and there's Miss White behind the thing. Of course, you'd probably she was a nice old lady, but the point is that, she was a little old lady who had strict control. You'd like to just choke her and say, go get my check, but you had to be nice. And, you go in there and talk nice to her, and she would go in and, get the checks. Well, one time, I don't know what Fritz was doing there, and we were getting the checks, and Fritz was saying something to us, and I says, well, can I get my check? I got to go to the dentist, I got a root canal I got to get. He goes, you got a root canal? Man, how much are you charging you for that root canal? I says, it's $150. He goes, $150? Them dentists up there in Lake Dallas, I take my boys over there, and they come tell me they're going to charge me this for this, and I negotiate with them. I says, that's too much money, and blah, blah, blah. He says, Miss White, write him a check for $150 for his root canal. And she did, and he gave me $150 for the root canal. And it was great, It was like $150 I didn't have to come up with, and, hey, great. So Fritz, he was always good to me, and all the boys, I always got along with all the boys. And I didn't have any problems with them.
You worked a lot of territories. Who was your favorite booker promoter to work for the territories?
Oh, gosh, Ole Anderson I always had got along with. Gary Hart was good. I'm just trying to think, the other ones that we went to. God, there's some down, Jerry Jarrett. I can't say that any of them were bad. Promoters are inherently,
right.
They have their own problems, if you know what I mean. But basically, I didn't come across one that, I really disliked. Vern Gagne was Vern, but he was a little rough and hard to get along with. I think Vern Gagne's whole problem and why he lost his territory up there is because he could not communicate with the younger wrestler that was starting to come up. Right? And well, think about it. His whole thing was, the older style wrestlers. And it was, you had
Crusher,
Baron, Crusher,
Bruiser.
These guys, but they were older style before me. And as I came along, and not that I'm equal to Hulk Hogan, but when Hogan was there, and then Hogan left, And he had people coming. He had good talent, but he couldn't hold them.
Yeah.
Why? Because he just, he just didn't. I don't know if he didn't understand or didn't get along with them or didn't want to, or just possibly, he was an older man. They're younger. They just didn't see eye to eye.
Makes a lot of sense. You say that because you had, Vince with the flashy Hogan, you had a flashy Ric Flair, and then you have Nick Bockwinkel, who's fantastic, but
a little bit more the old style,
yeah.
And because they had people coming through there, they had the Road Warriors, right?
Yeah.
But he couldn't hold the Road Warriors either. Why? Because they wanted this, and he didn't see it that way. He wanted to stay in that old, and it passed him by. Poof.
It's interesting you bring up Vern and that whole situation because I've talked to a lot of the guys recently. The Beverly Brothers, the Destruction Crew, Mike Enos, Wayne Bloom, John Nord, and Scott Hall. We'll talk about Scott Hall in a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
But what they've all talked about was that Vern would book a lot of these guys and like the younger guys against somebody like the Bruiser and the Crusher, and no disrespect to them, they would say, hey, John Nord, here I am selling for a guy that's, 60 and can barely move, and I'm supposed to be a monster next week, and inherent there the problem.
Well, that inherently there's your problem.
Yeah.
He didn't move to the new. He still kept hold of the old. Basically, I think a little bit because of, that was his generation. Well, it's his place. It's his generation. He's not done. He wasn't done at the time, as far as he was concerned. And he wasn't going to hand it to Greg. So that's what happened. He had a lot of talent come through there that was not.
Yeah.
That he didn't do anything with.
Yeah. World class. We've talked to a lot of guys. Gary Hart, Kevin Von Erich himself. I've talked to a number of times. And they all talk now openly about, some of them more than others, how crazy the drug and party scene was back then. A lot of people talk about how crazy it was. Some people say it wasn't so bad. What do you remember about that whole scene?
Well, it wasn't. It was wild. But then again, what was the year? What was it?
The 80s.
The 80s. I mean,
that's what Kevin says. Kevin says
it's the 80s. I mean, there was mushrooms, there was cocaine, there was marijuana. In any era, there's all that stuff's there. It's still there today. You think it's not. Well, it is. It's all still out there, and it's just a matter of are they playing with it or are they not? And in that era, everybody was playing with it. We all played with it. Some were able to have a good time on the weekend and leave it alone, back away from it, go away, and it didn't bother them. And, maybe in a week or so later, they might play again. Others got eat up with it, they just ran with it all week long, and it might run them down, or, obviously it would run them down, but it was there and it was pretty prevalent. But do I really think that, nobody was partying like before the matches. I mean, people weren't showing up, all screwed up on, cocaine or mushrooms or whatever they might be into. Maybe a little bit of pot. They might show up high, but that was something you could work with. Nobody ever showed up drunk. That was like, that's just, you don't do that.
Yeah.
You could show up with a little bit of smoke. Nobody cared. I don't know if anybody showed up on the coke, but it was prevalent around. But those are things that it's not something you can get in and easily do in the ring.
Yeah,
it becomes hard.
Some of the guys have talked about, as much as they liked them, one of the problems with the Von Erichs was that sometimes they had a habit for no showing, and it would hurt the territory at different times because of whatever they were doing. I know Flair. Talking about guys not being able to show up for work. Flair's talked about in his book when he's had to go down and wrestle Kerry, where Kerry was just so messed up before the matches. Have you ever been in there with anybody down there, or anybody you can remember where that's happened?
That's everywhere though. Believe me, that's everywhere with any particular star. I mean, in any particular industry that you go to, that they're stars. Let's say you're, talking about, you want to go country, Western, singing, the rock and roll, the wrestling. You know, there's people when they show up, and the Von Erichs, of course, it was their area. They're the young stars. They showed up sometimes. You know, I can remember a few times. Yeah.
Yeah.
When they're a little crispy crittered. Yeah. You know, different times. I can remember David sitting on the floor. He's so fucked up he couldn't barely move. You know. But he gets up and goes out, and you get through it. You know, generally what would happen is the guy that's got to work with him would figure out a way to get through it, you know.
Yeah.
Get him out there, let him do a couple things, and then stop him and just beat him up for 5 or 6 minutes, right? Let him make a comeback and get out of there. Okay, right? All right. Yeah. It happened. It still happens. I don't guarantee it still happens.
Yeah. Do you think that, like today, especially after everything that happened last year with Chris Benoit, today everybody talks about WWE having their drug policy, the wellness policy, and the alcohol policy, and all that stuff. What do you think about that? Because I know a lot of guys from your era, you know, I've heard millions of stories about guys. Oh, we drank all night, and you know, and showed up and wrestled and went back to partying, and you know.
I don't know what their wellness policy is and their drug policy and all that kind of crap, but whatever it is, it can all be gotten around. I mean, these guys, they're a little bit different now. I'll guarantee they're different, because when I went up 2 years back, when I went up there to do, it was WrestleMania back, I don't know, 17 or whatever, you know. After the show was, hey, yeah, come on, we're going to go have some beers. You know, a couple of the older guys, come on. I'm thinking, come on, let's go have a beer. Let's go sit in the bar, you know, have some fun. Some of the younger guys, oh, no, we're going to go to the gym. The gym? What the hell? What? You're not going to make it. We just told them, you're not going to make it. You're not going to go to the gym after. No, you're not going to make it. You know, because half of the thing is a personality. It's political. Everything is political. I don't care. It's wrestling, hockey, football, baseball. It's all political, because if they don't like you and you cause problems in the dressing room, you make people mad. I don't care who you are. You're gone. You're gone. You're just not going to be around. They let you go. Why? Because you're ruining it for everybody.
Yeah.
Right? And you're not that good. We don't need you. I can build another one. You know, you'll get another guy that fits into the group. You don't need it. So, you know.
Yeah. Back to World Class. What are your memories of some of the matches you had with the Von Erichs?
Oh, I remember. What I do remember is Kevin. Goddamn Kevin. Kevin could wind up, he would turnbuckle you, and then he'd get back in the corner, and he'd come charging, and he'd get to hopping on one foot, and he'd kick you with the other foot, and he didn't wear any boots. But, oh, God, when he kicked you so hard that, you know, generally, you know, everybody's in pretty good shape. I mean, they might look like pigs, but believe me, if they flex, they can take a shot in the gut or something. But, man, he'd kick you so hard in the stomach or something. It was like, oh, it'd be like, it'd pierce your armor. You know, it's like, oh, God, he'd just kill you. So what'd you do? You had to smack him back, you know, and they never complained. None of them did, but they were a little stiff sometimes. You know, Kerry, Kevin, David, Mike, they all were a little bit. Mm-hmm. But if you smacked them back, they didn't care. They didn't bitch. They didn't cry about it. You know, they weren't like, you know, some of the promoters' kids are like, Daddy says go down. You know, but they were tough. But yeah. I can remember times where, man, it was a battle. You know, and especially with Kevin and David and those guys, you'd be trying to get them, you know, to sell or something. And they never want, you know, they think they got to be up all the time. So you got to constantly be on them to keep them down, you know, and beating on them. And you know, so it got to be a struggle once in a while.
Whose idea was it to put you and your brother under the mast and call you guys the Super Destroyers?
Oh, I don't know that it was anybody's idea. I can just remember that I had been there like 2 years. And I think it was just time for me to get out of there for a while. And I left and I went to Atlanta for 6 months or something. And I did some stuff with Tommy Rich. And Scott came in And Scott was there, and I don't know if he came in as a super destroyer.
I think he did. I think it was
he might have come in there as a super destroyers, and then it was always that I was going to get out of Texas for a while, and then come back. Well, then when Scott came around, we said, "Well, hey, let's go back, and we'll just go under as the hoods, just go under as a super destroyer. I can go back even earlier. I've been gone for a while. I'll go under the super destroyer, cut the hair a little bit, and just go in there and have Akbar bring in the super destroyers." Fine, it worked great. And so we went in there and did that. We did that for, God, I don't know, I think it was like a year. So I don't even know how long it was. And it all turned out that they pulled the hoods off of Buck Zumhoff and Iceman King Parsons in a title match against Scott and I. We got the belts and they got the masks.
Mm. Yeah.
And then we came out when we came back, we came as the Long Riders.
I don't know what that was.
Yeah.
Do you think that a mask gimmick could still get over today?
Well, yeah, I do. It's for one thing, who does it anymore?
Nobody.
What's old is new, and what's new is old.
Yeah.
It all comes in a big circle, and if you watch, eventually they're going to get away from the muscle heads too. You watch, they're going to get away. They're going to go back to the big fat flabby guy that's 400 pounds. You watch, it'll come around. It takes time, but it will. Because what the heck, you get tired of watching a musclehead after so long, and then pretty soon, oh, my dad used to watch all them guys that were muscleheads. I don't like them. I want a fat guy or a skinny. It just changes. So I think it'll evolve. It'll come back around, and a masked guy, if you do it right. Yeah, well, look at what's the Mexican guy they got there?
Oh, Rey Mysterio.
Well, yeah, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Right? He's a mask guy. They've gotten away from it, but eventually they'll come back with a mask. Yeah.
What are your memories of, I know you worked a lot with him, Gary Hart as a booker?
I thought he was great. I thought Gary was fine. Very good. I mean, like I said, he brought me in down there, and, I think at the time it was the Von Erich boys coming of age. Gary was the booker. He was smart enough, or I don't know what, but he brought in people that were of the boys' age. And so everybody got along. It was a big family of people. And we all got along. There was never any complaints about, I don't like him. Or, everybody got along down there.
Did you ever get caught in the crossfire of the problems between him and Ken Mantell?
No.
No,
I like Ken too. Ken was my friend. And Gary's told me that, Ken, I go, I never saw it. It was, Ken, well, he had his problems, and I know he lost his ass down there.
Yeah.
When, the Wild West merged in, and it went, why? I don't know. I wasn't privy to that stuff, I wasn't in the offices, and I don't know where the money, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do know that Ken lost his ass.
Yeah. Could you tell when you were in World Class, during the early 80s, that there was something cutting edge about it when it was just about to explode?
Well, the cutting edge is all the cameras that was around the ring. That was it. That was the deal. We knew it when we were doing it. We were putting together this show. Channel 39 was coming in, and they had cameras all over the place. And we were told there's going to be cameras right up in your faces. So you got to watch, and you got to watch what you're talking about. And you got to know that we're going to be putting matches out there that is not just going to be squash matches. You may go out and have to, put somebody over tonight, but next week you'll have your time over here. And none of them are going to be squash matches. They're all going to be good, interesting matches, and everybody's going to, go over. And we knew it when we were doing it, that it was going to be something different. And then once you saw it with the cameras and the guys running around, you got to know the cameramen. They knew when you were coming and what was going on. It was great.
Wow. You have any good road stories from the territory?
Jeez. Wow, there's a lot of good road stories, but I don't know. Nothing that really stands out like, that something really crazy happened. We got away with a lot of stuff. a lot of drinking and driving.
Yeah.
a lot of the drugs and driving and all of the stuff with the stupid shit that would happen. You know, I can remember one time driving back from Tulsa, and we had gotten some ecstasy up there, and we thought, oh, this would be cool. Yeah, we'll do this, you know. So now we're driving home, and don't do this, people. But you know, during the time we thought we were indestructible. We're driving back, and pretty soon the lines in the road feel like they're going right through you. Oh man, you can't even drive, you know. And so we had to pull over. I'm fine, I'm driving, but the person in the front seat over here, they kept saying, "Oh man, stop! The lines are going right through me." You have to get in the back seat, put somebody else up front, and when we're doing that, we're stopped taking a piss, you know, and we got the trunk open and getting a few more beers, you know, and just as the last guy's getting in the car, here comes a cop pulling up.
Wow.
Pulls up behind us. Everything okay? Yeah, we just had to go to go to the bathroom, and they shut the trunk, and he got in the car, and the cop went on by, and we just went on down the road. There's a lot of stupid crap like that. I can remember driving from Calgary, Edmonton back into Calgary, and of course, don't do this, you know, but we were drinking whiskey sevens, and oh God, we drank like a whole bottle of whiskey seven, and we're driving back into Calgary, doing about 80 or 90 into town. Of course, you get pulled over by the Mounties, you know. Of course, here we are, Americans. Oh God, you know, they're looking at us like, oh, what the, you know, of course, the whiskey bottle's right in the car. Yeah, okay, all right, you know. So, you know, out of the car, and they lay there like, well, what's in the trunk? Nothing, you know. Well, I'll open the trunk. Okay, open the trunk, and there's my shotgun laying there.
Wow.
Jesus, you know. I had brought the shotgun. I have no idea why I brought a shotgun with me to Canada. You know, I was going to Canada. I don't know. Because I always carried this shotgun with me around the country. I don't know, just a shotgun that you'd have at your house or wherever you're staying. And for some reason, it was in the trunk. And the guy looked at me and went, "Oh, Jesus!" You know, I went, "Well, you know, I don't know." It wasn't loaded or nothing, you know.
Yeah.
And so he says, "I got the hole in the whiskey bottle," and he goes, "Well, pour that out." And I poured it out, and he says, "You know, get rid of it." And I looked around like, whoa. And I threw it in the trunk and shut the trunk. He says, "No, get out of here." Because we were right in close, and we were very close to where we were going. And he didn't want to, we were drunk, but we weren't really bad.
Yeah.
And I don't think he wanted to mess with the paperwork. He just go. Okay. And so, you know, and then we're up in another one of these things. We're up in, Montreal, coming down the St. Lawrence Seaway from, God, we're on the state side of the St. Lawrence up there. It's Chicoutimi, not Chicoutimi, or I can't think of it at the moment. Anyway, we're running down the highway, traveling. You got beer in the car, you know, you got a little bit of smoke in the car, and you're traveling down the road, and and all of a sudden, they're pulling everybody over up here. What? Oh, Jesus, they got a road check. So it's like stuff everything, you know, you got 12-pack of beer or more. You got smoke and you're hiding everything, you know. And of course, they pulled everybody over in line. And of course, here they come to the car and they roll the window down. You roll the window down. The Mountie is, you know, because we're up in Quebec.
Yeah.
And I looked at him and I went, American, I don't speak French. Oh, just American. The guy up front goes, ah. He just stepped away. He says, and he just let us go.
Wow.
But they'd have had us again. We'd still be up there. You know, there's a lot of those kind of stories that everybody's got them, you know, and on the other side of that, you shouldn't do those things because we all know why you live and die. But you know, I was over in Japan with Barry Darsow was the Axe or Smash of Axe and Smash. Anyway, we were discussing how many people we know that have died for whatever reasons in the business. And we got up to 350.
Wow.
So I'm the lucky one. You know, there's only a few of us that made it through, and the old timers that you see, they're just the ones that got through it. There's a lot of dead ones that have moved on, are waiting for us to get there.
We were talking a little bit about wrestling the Von Erichs. Just about everybody we've interviewed and I've talked to always say that David was the best worker out of the bunch. Do you agree with that?
True.
Okay.
Yeah, that's an easy one. Yeah.
Okay. Memories. I saw that you wrestled Chavo Guerrero on a big Superdome show for Bill Watts once on one of his big shows.
Chavo. Old man Chavo. Senior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you remember about wrestling Chavo? He was pretty cutting edge for that time.
Chavo was great.
Yeah.
I had, Chavo and I always got along. He was he's crazy. I mean, he's a crazy Mexican. Jeez, what else can I say? He was always fun. I got along with him well. He's still alive. I don't know. I haven't talked to him in a while. I think the last time I might have talked to him was somewhere. Not when Eddie died. There's Chavo and Eddie and Mondo and Hector. And Hector I've seen down in Florida at different times. I think I talked to Chavo one time when Chavo Jr. and Hector, not Hector, but Eddie were running around. Oh, Chavo was on the road. Chavo Sr. was on the road with Eddie back with the WWF. I saw him one time when they came in Duluth, Minnesota. And we always had a good time. We laughed and giggled about. We're on the tour. And if I'm not mistaken, it was the tour that David Von Erich died on. Chavo was on it. So was
Brody.
No, well, Brody was on it, but the guy he's out of Florida. Okay, I was just talking with Gary Hart about it earlier. Anyway, the story is that Chavo went out and bought this big boom box and it had a Mr. Microphone. Right? Every night every night everybody got drunk. He'd go out and, eat and drink. But he always had Mr. Microphone and they'd come back to the hotels and then he'd start singing on this Mr. Microphone and it went right through, this boom box. Well, this is like 5 years before that kind of stuff comes to the States. And oh God. Every night the hotel would be banging on his door, hey, no, Mr. Microphone, no more, no, stop. Every night he'd be singing. He'd get kicked out of the hotel. It was like, yeah, it was funny.
Memories of matches with Roddy Piper.
I never really worked with Roddy Piper. I was never in the ring with Roddy Piper. Although, I was just telling you about Chavo.
Yes.
And Dickie Slater was the name I couldn't remember. Those two would get drunk together and sing on Mr. Microphone. Well, Roddy Piper was on that same tour. And on that tour, Piper, he'd go out and they, of course, again, drinking too much, the evils of the alcohol. But he was out there one night and a taxi cab came by and he dropped an elbow on the taxi cab as it went by. And the taxi cab came, and boom, he landed in jail over dropping elbows on a taxi cab, and they had to go get him the next morning, and blah, blah, blah. All this stuff was just unbelievable crap. That was, I think, that same tour. It was Brody was there, and Chavo, and all these guys were there, and Dickie Slater. I don't know. We had been out with, when you go out over there, usually it's somebody's taking you out, a sponsor, someone they're taking you to, you eat and then you drink all night long and, have a good time. We came back and Dick Slater was in his room and I don't know if he had pissed off the guy, the sponsor, or, made him embarrass the guy or whatever. You know how the Japanese are. They're all about face and all this, at least back in those days. I don't know what they're like anymore. But my point comes to is that, you know, Brody and I are walking them down the hall. And, you know, of course, we're half drunk too. And we come to Slater's door. And I don't know if we knock on it. He don't come. He don't come. Brody stepped back and he kicked that door.
Wow.
And the door just fell over. The whole frame fell out and just fell in. Kaboom. We looked at each other like, oh shit. And we ran down the hall and went in his room and slammed the door. And we were quiet. Shh. And of course, everybody was out there. Like, you know, the next day we found out that when he kicked that door, the doorknob shot across the room, hit the other wall, the door fell in. Slater was scared to death that the mafia was coming to get him over there. Oh, God, it was ridiculous. It was funny.
What do you remember about matches with Iceman Parsons?
Iceman. I remember Iceman King Parsons. Shit. Taught him how to work. He was all right when he came in. I mean, I like Iceman. Iceman and I always got along. But, you know, I think even he'd agree he learned a lot between myself and Scott, my brother. I remember Scott hit him so hard it shot his false teeth across the ring one time. And Iceman was a good guy. I always enjoyed him, you know. He worked hard. And, yeah, I liked him.
You've talked about it on the WWE DVD lately. And a lot of the guys have talked about David over the years. And you were actually there the night that he passed away. What do you remember about that?
Well, that's another one of those deals where the evils of alcohol, I suppose. But it really wasn't. That's not what killed him. We drove. You fly over there, you know, of course, when you're flying on those planes, whenever you'd go over there, the thing you do, you'd always jump to the West Coast. You know, that's a short flight. And then when you get there, you'd have an hour or so sitting in the airport. And so, of course, you'd have a few beers. And then you get on the plane. And generally what you do is have a few more beers and a few drinks. You get something to eat. And then you could go to sleep. And about the time you wake up, you know, it's going to be, you know, in a few more hours you need to land, right? Okay, so I'm sure that's what we did. And then when we got over there, of course, as soon as you get there, they took us to a press release, you know, kind of a deal where you go in, everybody talks tough, you know, does all their gimmick and, you know, everything's going on. And then after that, of course, everybody, we're cut loose and, you know, just we'll pick you up in the hotel lobby tomorrow morning or whatever, 10 o'clock, whatever it was. And of course, you know, it's early, so we think, well, let's go. Everybody always go to Rivera Steakhouses in Japan. So we went over there and we'd eat and drink beer and eat. And, you know, you get the big steaks. It was nice because you get a big steak over there and it would be like almost like a steak at home, but in Japan. And so we went there and of course, everybody ate and drank. Well, David ate like 2 plates and drank just like we did. And then of course, we stumbled back to the hotel we were staying at. And when we got there, David said, I'm going to go upstairs. I'll be right down. We all went right into the bar, you know, started drinking. And David went upstairs and he wasn't gone 2 seconds, it seemed like. And he was back down, sitting right next to me, drinking Chivas Regal and ordered more food. I'm looking like, Jesus, where are you putting, how do you eat all this food, you know, or whatever. You know, so we laugh and giggle and, you know, continue on. Well, pretty much it's David and I, and it's like, you know, I'm done. We're done. Let's go. So we're going upstairs. He goes, well, you know, come on up to my room for a few minutes. Come on, well, you know, we'll bullshit and laugh and giggle. You know? So I go up to his room, and I remember walking down the halls. You know, in Japan, the hallways are not 8 foot tall; they're about 6 foot tall. He's real tall, and he'd run his head into the little signs hanging off the side of the thing that says whatever. Who knows what it says? But he thought that was so funny that he could just run his head into the sign because, you know, he was tall. So we go into his room, and of course, you know, blah blah blah, talk whatever, and he was fine. And I remember. I says, you know, Dave, I'm gone. I'll see you tomorrow. When we go home, when we go. And I say we, but it was just me. I go, and I remember him sitting on the side of the bed. There's a wall close by him, and he's going to sit there. He says, I'm just going to sit here and call my wife. And okay, yeah, all right, well, we'll see you tomorrow. Okay, off we go, blah, 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 go to sleep, blah, blah. Get up next day, don't see him, And I don't think we left till maybe it was later in the afternoon, but we're all on the bus now the next day. And we're sitting on the bus, and no David. Brody's on the bus. Everybody's on the bus. And Joe Higuchi comes down. Joe Higuchi is the Japanese referee that works a lot with the American boys over there. Used to. I don't really know what he's doing anymore. But he come on and goes, oh, Brody-san, come, please, come. And Brody gets up and like, oh, shit. We hadn't seen David all day, and we thought, oh. And the first thing we thought was, oh, you got to go save the promoter's son. He went out probably drinking all day. He's probably drunk. And off he goes. And we can hear in the distance sirens coming. Ambulance are coming. We all kind of looked at each other like, okay, everybody stood up and went right after Brody. Went right in. It was only on the second floor. Had a corner suite. Wasn't really a suite, but it was a corner room. The management was there, opened the door. Joe Higuchi went in, Brody went in, and I went in. And Scott came in. Everybody followed in behind. And there David was laying right in the same spot I'd left him. He had just laid back, and he was blue as your jeans. He was just blue. And you hear comes in, and all of a sudden, the ambulances all pull up, and up comes the paramedics in there. They get on him and try to do something with him on the bed, and the bed's bouncing up and down. You can't push him, so they wanted him off the bed. Of course, he's big, and so I grabbed him by his hands, and Brody had him by his feet, and we slid him to the edge of the bed. And when it slid him to the edge of the bed, his head dropped back, and shit poured out his mouth and kind of out of his nose. And they set him down, and they just started pumping, and they'd be wiping away, and they were trying to resuscitate. And every time they'd move the mask, they'd be wiping food away from his mouth, and his nose. And he was gone. He was blue. He never moved. And eventually, okay, everybody out, and basically, we had to go do TV, great, we got to do David. We knew he's dead. He's dead. He ain't dead. He's dead, And then they left him in the room, and 3 days later, they asked us if we'd all like to say goodbye to David one time before they moved him, because what happened was it was the end of the week, and it was like a holiday in Japan. So the coroner wasn't even around for 3 days or something, and he sat in the hotel room on the bed for 3 days because they brought us back in there 3 days later in order for us to say goodbye, because they're gonna so we went back in there and everybody went in. I can remember that Brody went over and kissed him on the forehead and said goodbye. And then they did have a funeral for him over there. And then he went back, and, I've got the paper from the Fort Worth or whatever. It shows a lot of stuff there. But I wasn't around the funeral. And then when I did get back, I did give Fritz some final pictures that night whenever you're at Ribera's, he always took a lot of pictures of all the boys. And when we came back a couple weeks later on the tour, went back there, he gave us some pictures of David. So I gave him to Fritz.
Wow.
So I don't know.
I have to ask you about this because Gary Hart talked about this in his shoot interview, and he was talking about David, and he said that somebody flushed drugs down the toilet in the room.
No. I know that David had a certain amount of some painkillers. I saw him there. That sort of stuff, but that's not what killed him. He didn't overdose on it. His stomach erupted. He was one of those, what is it, purging? He'd eat and purge and eat and purge. And his stomach was screwed up.
Bulimic, I think.
Yeah. And, that, that wasn't it. He didn't die of an overdose. It wasn't an overdose. His stomach erupted and it just choked him. He dead. Had nothing to do with any drugs.
Did WWE cut anything out of your interview that you did, or did they just leave it on as you did it?
Oh, you mean they just let it run?
For the one that you did for
the
their
one
DVD?
for them? Yeah, they just ran,
Yeah.
And they you obviously don't see everything because we sat there for 4 hours or something,
Oh, wow.
and chatted, and they used, pieces that whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. In World Class, how did things change as far as the houses and everything after the Freebirds Von Erich angle, after the cage angle, and everything started to...
Well, see, you guys all remember all that. The cage angle. I don't even know what you're talking
Where he
about.
slammed the cage door into his head. Star Wars 85.
Slammed the door into Carrie's head?
Yes. It started the whole Von Erich Freebird feud.
I remember that now just only because I saw it on a DVD. Now you mentioned it's like... that's another thing I find very funny is that people remember this stuff, and I was there, and it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do know that the Von Erich and the Freebird angle was a very big angle and drew a lot of money. I think the big thing that drew a lot of money is that they were young people. It was a new show, had a lot of charisma to it. It had a lot of young fans. And with the youngness and the mid-20s people, everybody was coming to see it. It was hot. It really was, They had a lot of good stuff going on.
So you think it was big? It wasn't just because of that one angle that popped all. It was a combination of just all the right ducks flying in all the right rows.
That one angle would not have filled the houses. That was good. But you have to have a supporting card. I mean, what are you going to do? Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant just by themselves isn't going to sell out Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
They're not. It's not going to happen. You got to have a whole show. Everybody's got to be hot. Everything was hot. I mean, the stuff we were doing, there was, I don't even know who was there. I could ask you, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I ask the fans. They know more than I do. I can tell you that everybody there was hot. And we all got along, we all laughed and giggled and had a great time. Are
you surprised about the resurgence in interest in World Class over the last couple of years?
Sort of, yeah. I'd have thought, it's dead and gone, which basically it's all dead and gone. But it is kind of interesting that, they're building... they do the DVD with them, with WWE, and you guys are doing this. It's all kind of, very interesting.
Yeah.
But there's only a few of us left. So you better get it while you can.
What led to you guys, you and your brother finally leaving Fritz for good? Well, I know you went back later, but at least, during that time in the 80s, was it just time to move, or? Well, when I left, and went out to, I had been there for 2 years straight, and in those times, and part of the problems that they're having now is the lack of talent in these different, there is no different territories, but part of the problem that you're having with, Vince is having is lack of new talent. Well, in the old days, when you'd been someplace 2 years, that was like unbelievable. Yeah.
The people get tired of seeing your face, no matter how good you are. They just, they've seen you. Okay. It was just time for me to get out of there for a while, to take a break, disappear. And that's all that was happening. It was always that I could come back, but just go for a while.
Yeah.
And then that's why once we left, or I left, and got in with Scott, and we're back out there with Ole Anderson and doing that stuff out there. Well, then it just fell in, that we'd come back onto the mass.
Yeah. We talked a little bit earlier that you went to the AWA right around this time, like the mid 80s.
84, 85, somewhere in there.
Like right around like Russell Rock, like little Russell Rock. Did you like working in the AWA? I guess it was home to you being up.
Well, that's one of the reasons that we ended up there. I went from, when I did leave Texas after that, I did go back to Atlanta. I was working for Ole. I was on the road. You know, we were nationwide. We were gone 3, 4, 5 days a week. You know, it wasn't working for me at the time. And Michael Hayes, and thank you, Michael, got the job booking in Florida. And of course, Michael and I have been friends for a long time. And Michael was up doing something in Atlanta. And I says, well, you know, what about us coming back down to Tampa with you? Well, okay. So I ended up going down there, you know. And then out of there, what the hell? I went from there. I was down there for a while. That's when the old man.
Eddie Graham?
Eddie Graham shot himself.
Mm.
The joke was that Michael killed him. Booking his territory, Michael killed him. But anyway, that's when he killed himself. Oh God! And then then I went in there, and then after that we were down there, and it just kind of fell apart. And I was thinking, well, why don't I just? We've never worked in Minnesota. I don't know Vern. I can call him, but you know what? I'm just gonna go. We're just going home. I'll just go down and go to work for Vern. Just tell him, hey, I'm here. We want to work. And we'd been around. It wasn't like he wouldn't know who we were.
We trained there. You trained in that?
I did not.
Oh, you did not?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I did not.
Oh, your brother.
Scott trained there under Cosgrove Aceres and went through the camp. Then I started with Scott and Charlotte.
Oh, okay.
So I never worked under Vern.
Oh.
Didn't really hardly even know him. So we just went back there, and Scott at the time, his kids were living in Duluth, back in Duluth. And so we just went back to be up there for a while. And we did work for Vern for, I don't know, it wasn't real long, but I think it was like 8 or 9 months. Someone else could tell me better than I could.
I think it was about that time when I was looking at the old results and stuff. It was about that time.
Yeah, and then I remember that, we did Wrestle Rock, and Rick Martel was in there, and Rick and Dino Bravo had, I don't know, I guess they had bought out Montreal, and they were having the book up there for that coming summer, which I think was 85. And they had Scott and I come up there as the Long Riders and work up there. So we went there that summer. And then then Scott got sick. And, then once the summer ended in, it was like September or something, we came back down into Duluth. And then I went on to Texas, and Scott was sick. So I think he picked up his bike out in Charlotte and drove it up to Minnesota. It took a long way around and stuff. But eventually, that was pretty much the end for him. He died in 87. He got a cancerous brain tumor that had started to develop up in Montreal. He started thinking his leg was like he had his back was out or something. His nerve and his leg was bothering him. So he kept thinking it was a chiropractor. And they sent him from a chiropractor to a doctor, to a surgeon, to a brain surgeon, and ended up he had a cancerous brain tumor. And he died a year and a half later in 87.
Wow. I can't even imagine how difficult that must have been for you, because you guys were closer than most brothers. You guys were together 24/7.
Well, yeah, we traveled on the road a lot, and it was difficult. Yeah. It was. He stayed up in Duluth, and I went to Texas. Of course, then when we were down there, we found out that he was going to be, he was ill, and it was going to be a problem. So yeah, it was hard.
Yeah. Working for Vern, we touched on it briefly on the first hour. Scott Hall, you and I talked about him a little bit before we started taping.
Well, yeah, you mentioned something.
Yeah. And what I told you was that I did a shoot with Scott Hall. I asked him questions, and I was asking questions about some of the veterans, if they ever maybe took advantage of him when he was younger and breaking in. And he mentioned the Irwins, and he said something to the effect that he had no time for the Irwins. He didn't like you and your brother.
Well, I don't know, Scott. I don't know, what we ever did to you, but perhaps you weren't the happiest. I know that we worked with Scott, with him and
Curt
Hennig, and we in the Wrestle Rock, as Curt Hennig, and Scott. And I don't know, maybe it was the fact that Curt Hennig at that time was a way better worker than Scott. I don't know. And so when Hennig could come in, maybe we flew more for him. And when Scott came in, we took over on him. I don't know, but there was never any dislike between myself and Scott Hall, none at all. The first time I ever heard that he didn't have any time for us was when you said it. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
The girl, sorry girls. But my point being, it was a complete shock to me, and Scott Hall was in Atlanta when I was over there after that. And there was I never had a crossword with the man. I don't know. I don't know what to say.
Memories of matches that you and your brother had with the Road Warriors.
I remember the Road Warriors. The Road Warriors liked working with Scott and I because we could go with them and we could stay up with them. And I know that Hawk and Animal used to like working with us. Simply, a lot of the other people they worked with didn't want to stay with the heaviness. They were heavy at first. They were very heavy at first. They scared people at first. But I can remember when we first came up, we had a match with them set up in the St. Paul Civic Center or something. And Scott and I went to the ring first. And of course, it was advertising all the Long Riders versus, the Road Warriors. And we're going to the ring, and the little kids are going, "Oh, you're going to get your asses kicked. Oh, they're going to kick your ass." And so we go to the ring, and, we had a really great match. Boom, 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 back and forth. They went over, fine. But the thing I remember was on the way back, the little kids were going, "Wow, you guys really took it to them. You guys are really bad, man." Even though we lost. But the point was that these little kids saw that we just didn't get beat up by them. So it was always a battle. We always had really good matches with them. And I always had a good time with them. I was in Atlanta when they first came down.
Oh, okay. And
I used to room with Hawk and Animal or one or the other. Back when they first started, they first came to Atlanta and they were brutal. They were brutal, because they were Minnesota boys, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So I knew them before I ever was really working against them,
Yeah. Memories of matches you and your brother had with the Rock and Roll Express.
Rock and Roll Express. Hoot or who are you talking about?
Ricky and Robert. Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson.
Yeah. We worked with them some.
Super Clash. You worked with them on one AWA like super show or something.
I think I've got a picture that's at my house that was taken by Paul
Ellering?
Paul
Heyman?
Yeah. Taken by Paul Heyman that night. That I've always really liked the picture of Scott and I, but I remember going out and work with them. I always enjoyed working with those guys. They were very good. I mean, again, they were smooth and there was no problems, No, we never had a problem.
Could you see the business starting to change in the mid, I guess, to late 80s, where as when you came in, you had all these territories to go, and now we're starting to disappear?
Yeah, you could see it. I guess you'd see it coming, especially. But see, I was in Texas, and we were nationwide. Atlanta was nationwide, and Vince was kind of nationwide. Vince was nationwide. I'd been there for 3 years. There were places to go, but I really wasn't going there. I was down there. What I noticed was that there was a time that the Von Erich boys, David, Kerry, Kevin, they wanted to go nationwide. Fritz would not let them. He was of the old school. The old school was that you didn't promote in someone else's backyard. That was the old style. That's why they had a traveling champion, right? You stay, this is your area. You stay here. Who was it over in, Watts was in Louisiana. You went to Mississippi. There was it the Fullers?
I think the Fullers were like southeast, like
and then
Alabama.
There was somebody else that was in Alabama.
Welch, maybe? Where Welch?
Yeah. And there was someone that was also
McGurk? They were McGurk?
Maybe, yeah. But everybody, there was little territories. Nobody went outside their area, and they had the champ. That was the NWA. And so when it was all collapsing, Fritz wouldn't go. He wouldn't let the boys go, right? But who went? Vince went. Who's got it? Vince got it. But we were there. We were actually ahead of them. When we had the big show at Texas Stadium, right? That was before their big shows.
Mm-hmm.
And we were ahead of them, but Fritz wouldn't let them go.
Yeah, because that was 84 and WrestleMania was 85.
Yeah, they wouldn't go.
Wow. How did you wind up work for Bill Watts? Because I remember we got Mid-South UWF and the Philly area at the time, and then all of a sudden you were on TV team with bad boy Leroy Brown.
Well, that all came, that was what year was that?
Probably 87, maybe?
That was, okay, so after I'm in Florida, I leave Texas, I go to Atlanta. From Atlanta, I go down with Michael Hayes to Florida. Then I went from there to Minnesota, then from there to Montreal. Montreal, I came back down into Texas to work for Ken Mantell.
Mm-hmm.
And a little bit of that Wild West started going, and then we got off into that UWF up there with Watts. And that's how I got in there. And of course, Akbar's there. I knew everybody there.
Yeah.
Right? So you know everybody, and Bad was there, and Gang is there. And of course, if anybody's going to fit in with Akbar and, his crew, it's going to be Wild Bill, who's been with him before.
Yeah.
And we'd been into Louisiana. I used to be into Louisiana years before, because when I first started, I started in Charlotte, I went to Atlanta, and then I went to Louisiana for Bill Watts. For 9 months, I ran between Louisiana and Oklahoma. So when going back in there, it would have been a young guy you knew some years back, that you see him now as where he's gone and now. So it just kind of worked,
Did you like Bill Watts?
Yeah, I always got along with Bill. I remember when Bill went to New York years back, I called him and said, hey, I'd love to come up and work for you. He didn't last too long.
No.
Whatever his problem was, I don't know. But
yeah,
I always enjoyed working for Bill. He was a bit of a pain in the ass sometimes, you're late, $500 fine, or, come on.
Yeah.
Give me a break. But other than that, he wasn't bad.
Yeah. Did you like teaming with Leroy Brown?
Leroy was all right. Leroy had that ass hit the seat, go to sleep disease.
Mm.
Jeez, he'd get in the car, he'd be asleep. He slept all the time, and I think that's what he finally died of. He had some type of a sleeping disorder or something. I don't even know what it was. He was great, he was nice. I enjoyed him, but like you said, he wasn't much to travel with, He'd go to sleep all the time.
Memories of matches that you guys had with Fantastics down there?
Oh, God, Bobby and
Tommy Rogers.
Yeah, Tommy Rogers. Well, I remember they were always very good. They were always small. And I remember Scott and I we had the tag team belts in Texas, and we were carrying them. And Scott was always one of those, I don't want to put them over they're small, right? Whatever. They had, that's the like I was saying earlier, a little bit of the old mentality of, I don't know, I'm big, how's he, And so I can remember, he wasn't that happy, and I truthfully didn't really want to drop the belts to him either necessarily, But I can remember Ken Mantell talking to us about it, because I think maybe the night before or something we'd work with him and we just beat them up, We didn't put their shit over, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so the next night we were there in Fort Worth, and it was TV, and we were going to drop the belts to him. And I can remember Ken talking to us like, well, come on, what are you guys going to do? Yeah. And so I can remember we're dressed, we got the belts on, and we're going to the door to go out. And we looked at each other. I said, let's just go out there and fucking fly all over the place and put these motherfuckers over like $1 million. So that's what we did. We went out there and, everything they wanted to do, we flew, big bumps, took all kinds of crap for them, And we thought, hey, yeah, it's great. Came back. They were happy. Everyone's happy. Ken Mantell comes over and goes, that was a little overbearing. So we went from, you guys sucked to, well, what the fuck are you doing? That was too much. I was like, oh, God, we just tried to make you happy. What do you want? We could have killed them. Well, what do you want?
Yeah.
So anyway, not that we were going to kill them ever, but, we didn't have to fly around. But I remember Scott and I looked at each other, let's just go fly around and just, have fun with it. So that's what we did. It was that fun.
Were you surprised when Watts sold to Crockett?
Oh, no.
No?
That kind of stuff didn't. That wasn't where, and that's not where the boys are. They're not there. They're not surprised. They're like, well, okay, can I work for you? That's.
Yeah. Were you still there when he sold?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. And did you stay on at all, or did you?
No, not too much. Can't remember what happened there. I remember Eddie Gilbert got involved with it. I don't know. I'm not sure if Wild West started after that or before it. I think Wild West might have been after.
I think it was.
I can't remember. I'm not sure. I just do know that I never really worked for the Crockett's. I guess one of the reasons I never worked for the Crockett's is I didn't like their style. Their style was very controlling. Again, kind of the old style. But they wanted you to stay till the end of the last match, even though you were the first match. You had to stay till after the main event got started, and you had to wear a suit and a tie everywhere, and you couldn't bring your wives or nothing. Why? Because if you bring your wives, well, the women that are there won't have a chance. Well, what the hell does that have to do with it? The whole mentality, their mentality was totally different than where I was,
Yeah.
In those days, they just did things completely different. They wanted you, to be there and they thought, I don't know why they thought, guys there are going to draw women. If your wife came, they're not going to come. It's completely beyond me. To me, in those days, personally, I think it was possibly the Crockett's wanted, had affairs going on, and that's what they liked, so that's what they had. I don't know. I really didn't get into it because I really didn't work with them that much.
Yeah. You wound up going back to Texas. You went back to World Class for a little while when Black Bart was there. Some of those guys. Were you surprised at how much World Class had changed in such a short time since the last time you were there?
Well, I guess a little bit, but it was one of those things where you're trying to revive it, bring it back, try to keep it going. Yeah. It was totally different, you had some pretty crazy people in there. Is that when Eric Embry was in?
Yeah.
And they went to the what was the name of it?
USWA.
Yeah, and then that all kind of changed, and then Jarrett came in and I don't know, bought it, whatever he did, and was running it out of there. That was basically, it was done.
Yeah. What are your memories of matches with Chris Adams?
Well, Chris came over. He was always a very good worker in the ring, and very nice guy, except if he started drinking. He turned on me when he would be drinking. I worked with him once when he was drunk, and he used that super kick thing, and it was pretty tight. So, you had to be tight with him, but you took care of him. Guys came, like I said before, if they came to the ring and they were drunk and you knew it, well, you protected yourself and took care of them and got through it the best you could. Yeah. And the only time, I didn't ever have a problem with Chris. There was never any, heat or anything between either one of us. But I knew when he'd be drinking, I wasn't around.
You actually wound up going to WCW for a little bit, and I think it was '89 when Terry Funk was there and Muda.
Oh yeah,
and all those guys.
Yeah. Dickie Murdoch. We had the double ring battle royals,
Yep.
and the towers, the twin towers were there. God, what were their names?
The skyscrapers.
Yeah,
Sid Vicious and Danny Spivey.
Hey, I gotta ask a question. Did Sid Vicious go into the towers on 9/11?
No.
Is he alive?
Sid Vicious? Yeah.
He is?
We just did a shoot with him, I guess, a year ago.
Someone told me, Sid, that you went into the towers on 9/11, that you were on one of the planes, and I was like, oh, God, really? Because I haven't seen him in years. I haven't seen him since he snapped his leg on TV.
Yeah.
Of course, I didn't even see him then, but I saw the tape. But anyway, point being is, where'd you go? But yeah, and the Steiners were there, and
Sting. Well, you worked with
Sting.
Sting.
Sting was there. I broke his eardrum. Hi,
Did you?
Sting. You like that, don't you? Oh yeah. I don't know where we did something, and it was just we were working somewhere. I don't even know where, but it was just that little spot where he's got a head scissors, and you put your knee on his leg and you pop your head out, and as a heel, you get your head out, and I'd slap him. Well, one time I slapped him right in his ear. I broke his eardrum. Sorry. So yeah, those guys were all there. Yeah, that was really fun. I worked with Dick Murdoch a lot there, and Dick and I, he was fun to work with. He was crazy.
And you worked with Brian Pillman, I think, there too. What do you remember about working with Brian Pillman?
Brian was always very good.
Yeah.
He was. I'm sorry. Sorry, Brian, I know you're gone, but I still always wonder why. What did Flair love about this guy? I mean, he wasn't very big. He said he played football, but I'll be damned if I ever saw him play football. He didn't look big enough to play football, but okay, fine. And he was fine. We had some good matches, Everybody always says, oh, remember the match, and it was in the, you threw him from one ring to the other one, and he got up on the top turnbuckle and dove from one end to the other, and it was a finish. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, it was good. I remember then he broke his ankle. He never recovered.
Right. What are your memories of Terry Funk from that time period?
What does anybody ever remember of Terry Funk? Terry was he's a really good guy. He was always very nice to me. I can remember being out in West Texas. I don't even know what, but we ended up going by his house one night. And, he's telling us about his moo cows. He's got his moo cows right outside the windows, and they come up to the window and moo in his house, and then he knows he's home because his moo cows are moo. And it's like, just another crazy story from him. But yeah, I always had a lot of fun with him. I learned a lot from him. He'd be wandering around before the matches. What are you doing? Oh, I'm looking for a gimmick. Just something you can take to the ring, to whatever. It might, how he was. You never knew. He'd come walking out and be dragging a trash can with him, and he'd be doing something before the matches with it. All that kind of crazy, goofy crap is useful at different places, and if I ever used it, anybody ever see me using it, I got it from him.
What do you remember, if anything, about a very young Paul Heyman from back then?
No, he was a picture taker. I remember you, Paul. Like I said, I think I have a picture that he took, and he also gave me a book that he made years ago, and it's just a book. Looks like he printed it, of pictures of the boys, and he's got little highlight names under it. And we're in it, Hogan's in it, different people. And I just remember, he was always real nice out there. He was friends with Jimmy Garvin. And, all of a sudden he's down in Atlanta, with the phone and doing the thing. And I'm going, another guy, got his way in, but yeah, Paul was always good.
Did you work with the Steiners at all when you were?
Oh yeah.
There? Yeah. What do you remember wrestling those guys?
Well, I remember Rob, the older one. dog face, whatever you want to call him. He was, when we were in 85, and Scott and I were in Minnesota working for Vern, he was trying to break in, and had been an All-American at Michigan, amateur wrestler. He had bowling balls for shoulders. Oh, God, it was unbelievable. You see him, and he just had these big round shoulders like this, And he was, the amateur. He was always that way, and he used to always have fun with him and Scott. And I'd come up behind him, I'd walk up behind him, and I'd grab him around the waist, and then I'd say 2 points, and I'd turn and run like I'd get the hell away from him, because for an amateur, someone get behind him and say 2 points. Oh my God, they're gonna take you down. And then of course when we get out in the battle royal, the 2-ring battle royal, of course they'd want to take you down and they'd roll you around and mess with you, and it's like, oh God, they just have fun. They were always fun. I remember one time we were in, I want to say it's like Cleveland or somewhere up there. And of course, Grizzly Smith was running the shows, and the 2 Steiners were there, and Rob and those guys. And we were playing catch. We thought somebody would have a ball. There's always screwing around the back. What are you going to do? You got an hour. They want you there early, So, you'd get a ball, and you're throwing it around, you'd bounce on a wall, or you'd play catch with somebody, just goofing, And Rob came by, and I threw it at him, and he wasn't looking at it, hit him. And that's like, ooh, and so, and then so Grizzly, he calls a meeting, and he's got a little meeting going. All of a sudden, son of a bitch, what was that? God damn it. Well, Rob, when I was standing listening to Grizz tell this meeting, whatever it's about, Rob had picked up the stanchion, the bottom of a stanchion, they're a heavy piece of metal. And he didn't drop it from real high. I don't think he really wanted to hurt me, but he was real close with it, and he dropped it on my toe from about that high. And son of a bitch, did that hurt. Oh, God. I was to tears with that. That hurt.
Yeah.
And I knew he looked at me like, like, God, I really didn't want to hurt you. Not that he was like afraid I was going to beat him up, because that wasn't going to happen, but I think he kind of felt bad that, he hurt me a hell of a lot more than the tennis ball hurt him.
Yeah.
But it was just one of them fun play things that always happens,
Yeah. Memories of teaming up with Terry Gordy in Japan.
Oh, Gordy, yeah. I remember that we were on a tag team tournament, and Gordy and I ended up in the main event against Abdullah the Butcher and this Sheik.
Was it the Sheik? The original Sheik?
No. Another Sheik.
Tiger Jeet Singh?
Yeah, Tiger.
Okay.
It was Tiger. Yeah.
Huh.
And so we were the main event, or the thing with those two, and we obviously they went over, but we had a lot of fun. Terry Gordy and I, we met in Atlanta my first time, with the Freebirds and Buddy and Michael, and of course we're about the same age. I was a little older than they were, but they were older than I was in the business.
Yeah.
So we fell in right away.
Did it get frustrating at all when you were in WCW at that time not to have as big of a push as you were used to having throughout your career?
What time?
During this time period, like when you were wrestling like Pillman and those guys, like you and your brother were usually like the featured team in the area.
Well, yeah, it is a little bit. You'd like to, be doing, more.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even always about the money. It was more about doing something, what you're doing. You just go to the matches and just go out there and, it didn't matter. You like to always be interested in something, being part of the draw, being someone that the people look like, oh yeah, you'd be somebody. You're somebody rather than just another also.
Yeah.
So was it frustrating? Oh, I wouldn't call it frustrating, no. It just wasn't, it wasn't our time there,
Yeah.
Which is understandable.
How'd you wind up in Global?
I don't know. That's another one of them things I'm just, you know, I after I was in Texas for like 3-4 years straight, it kind of became home. And so a lot of these places I might be working, I'd still be living in Texas. And so Global, I think I just heard that they were going to be running something, and I called that guy. What the hell was his name?
John Ayers? Joe Pedicino?
Pedicino. Yeah. I think I knew Pedicino from Atlanta.
Yeah.
I just called him and says, hey, you know, I'm here, you know, you don't got to fly me in. I'd be happy to work, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I'd probably have mentioned, you know, I'd like to do something. I don't want to just be, you know, I also ran. Oh, no. So we did. And, you know, Global was fine. It was, it could have been more than it turned out to be. You know, it was one of them deals where they spent too much money flying everybody all the way out there. And they ran through way too much money too fast. But
they were on ESPN, I think, for a little while.
Yeah.
What are your memories of working in Global with real young guys, Mick Foley and Scott Levy?
Well, Foley, I know who. Levy, is that, what's his
Raven?
name? Raven,
Yeah.
Well, I remember that Levy was very good, but he also was a little weird. You know, he was very good in the ring and had good talk, but he was just different, odd. You know, I don't know what to say. Well, you know who he is. Well, that's the way it was then. Now, you know, so. But he was good. I always figured that he'd do something. Actually, I figured he'd do more than he's done.
Yeah.
You know, sorry, but you know, and Foley, we never thought you'd get as far as you did. And I've told you the story that my manager, Frank Dusick, told you one day to go get a job because you're not going to make it. Because he had such a different style. You know, jumping off the aprons onto the concrete floors and doing the style that he had. Nobody thought he'd ever, you know, live long enough to get anywhere, right? Much less, you know, that it would get over. Well, little did we know, right? You know? And Frank Dusick, if you ever see this, and I know you're out there, you did say that, didn't you? You told him one day that he should get a job. And now, Lord.
What are your memories of a young John Hawk who's now morphed into Bradshaw?
And John Hawk. I remember John. He was young, and we used to go to a place in Texas. This was like after the Sportatorium was done. And we called it, what the heck? It was like the Mexican Sportatorium down in like the south side of Dallas. And he used to come down. He was a big kid. And him with another second generation. Well, not the John.
Bobby Duncan Jr.?
Yeah, Bobby Duncan Jr. And I worked with them a couple times. And Bobby Duncan Jr. ran his head into my foot one day too hard and kind of split his lip. And he always gave me a hard time, like, you kicked me. No, I didn't kick you, you ran into it. But anyway, I remember. And then John and I went to Japan once, and then we went over to Korea for a week tour together. And we laughed and giggled, and we had a great time.
That's awesome. Do you think Joe? Well, I'll let you. Did you want to?
I'm having a drink, folks. Well, it's just Mountain Dew. Anyway,
yeah.
What?
Do you think Joe Pedicino was in over his head with the operation?
What operation? You
Global.
got me.
Joe
Global?
Pedicino. Joe Pedicino. Global. We're talking a little bit why it failed.
Oh, I don't think he was over his head. Other than I just think. I don't think he used his head. I don't think he used his head. He didn't need to fly that many people out. As far as the booking of it all goes, it was fine. The production was fine, you know. As I remember, it was, you know, it was different. I think it could have gone. It was way too expensive to film it all the time, you know.
Yeah. Did you think Lightning Kid, Sean Waltman, and Jerry Lynn, and they had those crazy matches, which were very crazy for that time period. Did you and some of the veterans think, wow, these guys are way over the top with this stuff?
No. Dynamite Kid was already doing that in Calgary before that.
Sure.
I'd seen Dynamite Kid and David Boy Smith in 1980, and Dynamite was doing that stuff then, diving off the top ropes onto the chairs, and I always thought, Jesus, he's crazy. You know, he's gonna kill himself, and for what? And you know, it wasn't needed.
Yeah.
And you know, it's again, people, it goes in cycles. You see crazy things, and then suddenly you don't see them anymore. You don't see a lot of chair shots to the head anymore, do you?
Nope.
I wonder why. Anyway, point being is, so when I saw him doing it, those guys doing it, I'm thinking, well, you know, it's just another offshoot of what's going on, you know. And then ECW out there. Well, ECW started out as Extreme West Coast Wrestling or something.
Just Eastern Championship Wrestling.
You know, well, I think wasn't it before that? It was more of an extreme thing where they did a lot of they'd go to the balcony and
that was after. It started just like a little indie in Philly. And
yeah, Paul Heyman.
When Paul took over the book, then it went to like all the extreme. And
yeah, well, anyway, the point is, all that stuff is kind of just people trying to have their own style, I guess, you know. And those guys were, if you know, in those days, the smaller guys did that because when Scott and I were, if you will, in our prime, along came chair shots. Oh, the big guy had tattooed head on the East Coast.
Bam Bam Bigelow?
Bam Bam Bigelow. Well, Bam Bam, if I'm not mistaken, came around about the time we were in Minneapolis.
That sounds about right.
I think we met him just because we're out there on East. I don't know. But I remember him. And I remember him saying, "Oh, I want to go. I can get up to the top rope and I can do a backflip and land out in the middle of the rope." And my brother looked at him and said, "Shut up. You're not doing that. You're too big. Leave that stuff for the little guys." All right, well, years come and years go, and pretty soon he's out there flying bingity bang, and the big guys now are all flying bingity bang, right? Yeah. But back in those days, it was more, no, leave that for those guys. Because sure enough, if the big guys are doing it, what the hell does it mean when a little guy does it? Nothing, right?
Yeah.
You got to.
A lot of veterans will say, like you're saying now, they don't need to do it, so why?
No, it's not necessary.
Yeah.
I mean, if you learn to work, there's a lot of things that aren't necessary.
You went back to WCW for like a little while, but then it seemed like you had a time period from like 94 to like 96, right before you went to the WWF as the Goon, where you were kind of out of the spotlight for a little while. Did you go into semi-retirement at the time, or did you just do like spare indies here?
Yeah, I was. We were living in Texas, and you know, it was one of those things where you had a place in Texas, and there wasn't a lot going on. I mean, you know, in the 90s, there wasn't a hell of a lot going on everywhere. And I've been to those places, you know, I'm at the end of a run, basically. The end of my time is coming, right?
Yeah.
Didn't know it, but now you look back, yeah, it's pretty much, you know, you're coming to the end. And so I think just for a couple of years, I was just home doing independent stuff, jumping to Japan a little bit. You know, I think that's about the time I was over with Gordy on the, maybe it was. Anyway, so. But no, at that time, before I went for the Goon, I was just home.
A lot of the newer fans may remember you as the Goon in the WWF. How did you wind up going to the WWF and the whole Goon gimmick and everything?
I don't know. I guess it was Brother Love.
Bruce Pritchard.
Bruce Pritchard, you know, I've known him, and he was out there. And of course, you know, you're always trying to. That one place that I'd never gotten to in my career was New York. Hadn't been there. And of course, he's out there. A lot of my friends have been out there, in and out. And, you know, when I was on the road before, I didn't need to go. But now it's the end, and I hadn't been there. I always wanted to, why not go? And of course, you talk to them, and finally they were looking for, they called, I don't know, myself and the plumber. What's his name?
Dirty White Boy,
yeah,
Tony
Dirty
Anthony.
White, Tony. Why Tony? God, I haven't seen him in a long time here. There was another kid.
Tracy Smothers was?
Tracy Smothers, and one more. He was down. He went as the shooter, the little shooter guy.
I forget.
Yeah, you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But anyway, they just, they had us. They were going to pick up some guys, and so they said, we're going to pick you up. Why don't you come on out? And so I go out there, and they said, well, what would you do? What, short of Wild Bill, what would you do? And I was just sitting there with Pritchard, and I said, well, I don't know. It just came to my mind right there. I said, you've had baseball, football. You've never had a hockey player. You've never had a hockey player come to the, WWF. And I just, off the top of my head, I'm like, hockey player beats everybody up and they kicked him out of the league, let him do that. And he goes, maybe, and so then we, go on, and then they called me later, and Vince came up with the name the Goon. Evidently, he thought it was a great idea, and they said, well, and I said, well, if you're going to do the Goon thing, because I had, I played hockey, right? And playing hockey and wrestling, well, you work as hard or harder at hockey. And I says, I can wear all the equipment and wear it in the ring. Really? And I said, well, yeah, that ain't hard. Shin pads, they don't weigh nothing. The equipment's nothing. And then we were trying to figure out, well, what are you going to wear on your feet? And I was thinking, what about some boots? And I said, well, wait a minute. Why don't we just get a pair of skates, take the toque is what it's called. Take the toque off down there and put the crepe sole in and narrow it down so that it looks like a skate. And we'll just see what it happens. So we bought a pair of tack skates, and they took it and did it, and I put them on. It's like walking on a pair of skates. It's not really hard at all. Everybody says, how do you walk on those? It's not. It's simple, and then the rest of it is, you're just wrestling in all that equipment. And I think when they did it, they thought, oh, this will be cool. And it was. Everybody seemed to like it. They didn't know what to do with it.
Mm.
I mean, what to do. It was kind of the end of the gimmick wrestling situation stuff, that, like I said, everything goes in cycles. And, they used to have the bushwhackers and the crazy things and the different, character things that worked for a while. And this was one that was at the end. And I just don't think they knew exactly what to do with it. Who to put you with, what do you do with the character, right? We had some fun with it, and I think a lot of people liked it. And like when I go now, I still hear people going, the Goon, Goon. The people seem to like it, but what exactly to do with the character? Who does he go with? I remember I wrote when I first was out there, The Rock was just starting, and he was just young. I said, well, the Goon and The Rock, the Goon could have a Stanley Cup matches, because it was about that time. It was just starting the Stanley Cup for that year.
Okay.
And, it could be a thing where it was the Goon versus The Rock for Stanley's Cup, right? And it would be the best of 7, right? Boom. And every time you'd have a match, the winner got this cup. Well, whenever The Rock would win, he would get a nice, beautiful cup to be carried to the next match, which is a best of 7 series. And every time the Goon would win, he would get an actual old used hockey cup supporter hanging. And he goes, it's Stanley's Cup.
Yeah.
But anyway, it didn't make it anywhere. Fell on the cutting room floor, if you will. But, it was just an idea. And, obviously The Rock, maybe they had something else, but it was just an idea. And just silly stuff like that, it could be done, But again, like I say, it was a good character. I think people kind of got a kick out of it, but what to do with it.
Yeah. Did you like Vince?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a lot of, sit down talks with him,
Yeah.
The time that I've ever met him, he's always been cordial and nice to me, and I can't complain. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've spoken too many words to him. I mean, it's not like I sit and had dinner with him.
Yeah.
Nothing. But he's always been fine. Everybody out there has always been fine, Everybody's always very cordial and everything.
do you remember about the clique, about Shawn and Scott Hall and all of them? Were they there when you were there, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash?
Scott Hall and Nash and those guys were more down in Atlanta.
Oh, okay.
And I was there, and they were all there.
Shawn, did you work with Shawn up there?
Shawn Michaels?
Yeah.
Shawn Michaels, I haven't worked a lot with him, no. But he was, I remember back when him and Marty Jannetty were together years and years ago. And I knew him a little bit then, but they were real young. And then, of course, they went off, and Shawn's been up there,
Yeah.
I was never really in a territory anywhere with Shawn that I can remember that. But he's been up there.
Yeah.
I mean, forever, and, he knew who I was, and I've known who he is. And so we talk and, mutual respect and all that sort of thing. But, truthfully, I don't think I've been in a territory with him.
Yeah. Now, were you up there as a goon when Steve Austin started taking off, when the whole Stone Cold thing?
Yeah. When I first,
Yeah. Did you know Steve from
Steve was down in Texas.
Yeah.
Breaking in with chair shots again.
Yeah.
Oh, the British guy.
Chris Adams.
Chris Adams. He broke in through Chris. And the Renegade thing down there with the Jarrett's and those guys, and he kind of came in through all of that. And I remember him down there, right? And he knew who I was, and then he was getting going up there with that.
Did you kind of have an idea that Vince was, really didn't have anything for you when he decided to let you go, or did it kind of surprise you? Or
well, no, it's not a big surprise. You could. After you've been there for a couple of months and doing stuff and there's not much going on, I could tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm no dummy. I mean, I know it's kind of a gimmick thing, and I could tell that it, they didn't quite know what to do with it, and the bookings got less and less, and was.
Yeah. Did you ever try working with ECW? I would think as the old Wild Bill Irwin character that would.
Paul, I did try to get in there with them when I called Paul a few times, and then I got a hold of who was booking it for him.
Tommy Dreamer,
yeah,
maybe?
And I talked to Tommy Dreamer a little bit, and Jack Victory was there, and I talked to him a few times, and it just never worked out. They came to Duluth, Minnesota once. I went down and saw him, and I even worked a match with. God, I think he's with. Jarrett down there in Orlando now.
Yeah.
Styles?
AJ Styles?
Might have been him.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't remember either.
It was just a match put together in Duluth because I was there, and they all knew me and thought, well, yeah, just go out at a match. Okay.
Yeah. I guess it was probably around the time when they were going through their own troubles anyway. It sounds like time period.
It was because I talked to Jack after that victory, and he said, things aren't that great.
Yeah. What led you to finally just retire?
Well, it's, really didn't retire. It's kind of like time moves on,
Yeah.
It's now 1995, my son's born. The Goon is dead, I'm in Texas, and I'm thinking, everybody I knew in Texas is either dead or moved back home. Terry Gordy's went back into Tennessee, and Buddy's up in Chicago. Michael's out in Atlanta. Jimmy Garvin went back to Charlotte. All the Von Erichs are dead. It was just time, and I thought, I'm just moving home.
Yeah.
It was just time, and then when I got home, I ran into Ken Patera, and I worked for another year every weekend for Ken Patera up there. But then Ken kind of, got out of it and didn't promote that much anymore, and then it just died, and, it just filtered away.
Yeah.
It's not like I actively said, okay, I'm retiring.
Yeah.
It just took off. It just slowly died, kind of like the way it started.
Yeah. What do you do for a living?
Well, now I work with a construction company. A guy I met through wrestling
Oh, okay.
has a construction company, Mike Morrow. One of the Black Hearts. I don't know if anybody knows who they are, but they were with us in Texas, and him and Buster. And he got in for a few years, and then after that, he got back out, went back to his construction, and he's called me a couple times and said, "Well, I need someone to do this." Okay, So right now, I work for him.
Okay. Were you surprised when you got called to come back for WrestleMania 17?
Yeah. WrestleMania 17 was a funny one. Michael called me. And he says, "Are you ready to go one more time?" What do you mean? He says, "Well, you want to go? You want to be on WrestleMania?" I said, "Shut up." He says, "No, really. Do you want to be on WrestleMania?" Well, yeah, what? He says, "Well, you're going to do this thing, bring the Goon out. It's just for this one time." I says, "Well, I'm in, why wouldn't I?"
Right.
It's, well, of course. Why not? What do I got to lose? Fun, go see the boys, have a little bit of fun, whatever. And, it was nice when they called me here just for the 15-year thing with Raw.
Yeah.
Again, I think it's the Goon thing is kind of fun. They just don't know what to do with it,
Yeah.
It's
got to be flattering, that even after all these years, you're still, in their Rolodex. You're still on the top of their brains when it comes to, something, whether it's nostalgia or.
Well, yeah, I guess that, you'd have to say that is. It's nice to think that they still remember you and, they think, well, wait a minute now, he can still do that. And yeah, it's always there. Yeah, I guess, as long as you've got somebody there, and that, especially if I didn't know anybody in there that you don't say hello to, Michael and John, right?
Yeah.
But then again, Jerry, I worked with Jerry Briscoe in Florida years ago. God, there was a lot of people there that my brother knew and all those things. So yeah, it is nice to think that, well, they still think, oh, what about Irwin over there?
Any good Iron Sheik stories from WrestleMania 17?
WrestleMania 17, the Iron Sheik. Well, everybody knows the only reason he won was because nobody wanted to throw him over the top rope because they're afraid it'd kill him. That bad foot of his, right? He was scary enough just walking down to the ring, much less trying to throw him over the top. So anyway, he was Cosgrove is he's a good guy. Many, many silly stories about him. Ha ha ha! You jabroni, you at that bar here, all these professional superstars, and hey, jabroni, maybe you buy a little drink for everybody, and if not, maybe Sheiky Baby take you out on the dance floor, maybe little suplex. What you think, huh? What you think? Oh God, stories like that. Oh. All the time.
Just in general, you and your brother, you guys were such great heels. In your opinion, what makes somebody a good heel?
Oh, it's the personality.
Yeah.
You have to have it. And it's way more fun to be a heel than it is babyface. Way more fun. For one thing, you get to tell all the fat old ladies they're fat and old. And the cute ones that they're ugly and you wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole, and you get to piss everybody off, and you get to do whatever you want. Or the good guy, he's got to be nice and kiss the babies and tell everybody they're beautiful even when they're not, and be nice and shake hands. And the other thing is the heel calls the match. That's one thing you guys might not know, but since we're doing a shoot interview here, the heel calls the match because he's the only one that knows what he can do to make the babyface look good.
You still watch wrestling?
Yeah, I do. Not all the time. I mean, it's like I've got friends. I've got some friends that are that were professional hockey players, and one was in Europe, and another one played, for years. And it's like they watch and they're like, oh, I just can't watch this, It's like you see people making mistakes that other people just, they don't even realize what's going on. And, sometimes when I'm watching, I'm going, wow, that was bad, and so, but I watch to see who's there, what they're doing, and any young talent that does seem to come to the ring, like, Davey Boy Smith's kid. It's nice to see how they do. Watch them for a few minutes and you can tell, are they going to have it? Will they have it? And it doesn't take too long, so yeah, I watch.
Yeah. Do you watch UFC or any of the mixed martial arts?
No.
No.
No. They're the same as wrestling. Don't let anybody fool you. It's just a bigger, harder work. Stop it.
Do you want to write a book? It sounds like you have an awesome book of road stories. You have a ton of them.
I don't. I guess I could, but I've never really. I can't spell Bob. So how I could write a book, I don't know. My sentences would be run-ons. I don't know adjective from a verb. Could I write a book? No. Could I tell stories and somebody else write it? Maybe. But nobody's ever brought it up, I guess.
Is it hard after all those years of wrestling full time to adjust to life after wrestling, or is it kind of a relief in a way?
It's a little of both. At first it's hard to go back to, become a normal person, if you will, to have a everyday job, because you've spent 20 years not reporting to anybody. You reported only to yourself and the promoter, and if you didn't like the promoter, you left, and when you got in the ring, no matter what they tell you in the back, when you get in the ring, you're in charge. I don't care what the deal is. You can do anything you want in the ring, right? The only thing they can do is not put it on TV. You can't not show it to people. They're sitting there live, you know what I mean? So, yeah. The biggest thing that you miss getting off the road is the performing and the camaraderie of the boys.
Yeah.
The rest of it's...
What we usually ask the guys and the girls when we wrap up the shoot interviews is maybe a favorite rib that they've seen, maybe a favorite rib they've pulled, anything. I mean, everybody seems to have one or two that they remember.
I'm just trying to think. There's always something, and as soon as you turn the camera off, something will come to mind. But ribs those were a very, very tender thing, because ribs turn into fights and bad feelings. Hiding the snake on Jake the Snake. I don't know. I can't think of them necessarily. I was never a big ribber. I can't think of, Davey Boy Smith and Dynamite Kid and those guys. They were, Owen Hart was. As far as personally, a rib, I can't. No. Sorry, I'm a failure. I can't think of a rib. I'll write one in when I think of it. I don't have one at the moment at the top of my tongue.
Wow. Do you have anything else scheduled with WWE? Any DVDs or any?
No, I don't. No, nothing really. Nothing. I'm done.
There's a convention going on tomorrow. There's like a Q&A. Anybody you're looking, anybody you hope to maybe run into over the summer at a convention or something, like one guy or one girl where you're like, wow, I'd really like to see that.
There's many. I've wondered where Stan Hansen is. I've wondered where Tommy Rich is. I've wondered different people that come in. Where are the Fullers? There was Robert. And, the other, there's so many of these people that come and gone. There was a kid in Louisiana. His name was Richard Blood. And then he went to Calgary with us. And, he was such an odd bird that I always wondered whatever happened to him. Just different people. Like I said, the thing you miss the most is performing and the boys, the camaraderie of the guys that you run up down the road with, Mike George, where are you? I ran with him in Louisiana for 9 months when I was relatively green, and he'd been in for some years, ran with him all the time. Haven't seen him since, you know.
Mm.
Whatever happened to share shots? I'm telling you. They said, don't call me Yellow. He was in Louisiana.
Oh.
What's his name? He wore the leather thing on his arm. See? I got you too.
I know who you're talking. Like, I can see him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happened to him? And I heard Randy Tyler died. You know, Jim D, are you out there? Down there, great people, but what happened to them? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, you run here and you run there, and when you're doing it, you don't think nothing of it, and you never took any pictures. That's not cool. You know, it's just, and you don't have time, right? And you're running from place to place. But now when it's over, you go, golly, where'd it go?
Yeah. Do any kids or teenagers come up to you now because WWE, they have their 24/7 channel, and they show all the old world class TV shows, and you and your brother are on there a lot. So it's
really,
yeah.
I got to get that channel. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, they show.
No, people still recognize. You know, sometimes they're, you know, but that, you know, to me it's like water off a duck's back to me. I guess I don't pay any attention anymore over all the years. I just got used to someone's looking at you. Well, okay, they're a wrestling fan, you know, and you just go on with it. If they walk up, you say hello. If they don't, you just go on, you know.
Yeah. In closing, do you want to say anything to your fans?
You know, for any of those people coming up and just getting started, remember, just like Bruce Springsteen said, it can be gone.
TitleMatchNetwork.com